guys. Thanks for coming. I know it's a rough time slot. Everybody's a little bit sleepy, so we're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. Please, please, please. The more you guys talk, the less we have to talk, and Bud will talk all day, every day forever.
We'll be here until 5 o'clock.
We don't want that. So a little bit about myself. Bo Jacomar. I'm with Harbor Security. We're headquartered out of Albany. We also have an office in Framingham, Massachusetts, too, as well. That's our parent company, which is Harbor Networks. More focused on telecommunications and networking. At Harbor Shield, what we do is we focus solely on cybersecurity, incident response, pen testing, policy development, assessments. I'm newer to the Harbor team, but I've been in this industry for about 7-8 years now. Focus a lot with cybersecurity. Worked with these guys worked with Bud multiple years. Worked with Mark in the past too as well. Very knowledgeable people. I think it's been a great presentation. I've sat through it a couple times, and it's as good as the crowd can make it. So please, please, please try to be interactive with us, guys. And ladies.
I'm Round Peets. We were just talking about everyone. No one says my name right, so that's why Bud's up on the screen. That's what I go by. If you talk to my sister, she'll call me Buddy. And I'm like, oh, Buddy at this advanced age, right? So, but thank you for coming. I know you're all in Cartwheel right after lunch. So, Mark will explain if you really want to make it interactive, so we need your help. I don't think everyone wants to listen to us, as Bo said, or listen to me talk for an hour. So, let's just talk through this as a team. We'll collaborate. We're looking for ideas, and we hope to learn something from you, and maybe we can help you learn something as we go through the presentation. Just a little bit about my background. This is shocking to you, but this month is my 30th year in cyber. So I started at Frontier Communications. I was running the mainframe and AS400s. Some of you may not even know what that is. And I was on the shoulder saying, you're kind of political. Do you want to take this mainframe security job? And I'm like, what does being politically savvy have to do with anything with security? But we all know what that really means now, right? After all these years, it's kind of a politically charged world from a cyber perspective, and that role has always been that way. So from Frontier, I moved on to Global Crossing. Some of you may or may not know what that is. From there, I moved into Rochester Gas and Electric, and I was responsible for the security team. But one part of my job was I was responsible for RG&E's, and that's the local utility, their disaster recovery program. And that's where I learned a lot about what all this stuff really is all process-based, right? So, great experience there, and it's really helped me in these years now that I've morphed into more incident response and disaster recovery. From there, I went to Excelis, worked there for a couple years, security director, and then I went to consultancy for a number of years. And then I've never looked for jobs that found me. I was tapped and asked to come on over to USA Today and Geekhouse Media. So I was their Chief Information Security Officer. And then I think you may or may not know about GDPR. Does everyone know what GDPR is? European data legislation, privacy legislation. I was asked to take that program and build it. So then, right on the heels of that, of course, was CCPA, which is the California legislation for protecting consumer privacy. And it just evolved, right? And then I was so deep into privacy, I added privacy certifications to my security certifications. So, but Mark will explain. We do have this style. Some of you may have already seen this, talking about the four components within the NIST framework as it relates to incident response, right? So, but for me, it's, and some of you may or may not know about something called FedRAMP. It's a cloud accreditation that the Department of Homeland Security formed along with another agency. My team was responsible for the first authority to operate, and FedRAMP today still, I think, in the United States is the only true accreditation process that an organization can go through. Provide elastic cloud computing for the federal government being a private entity. So that was like a major shift in computing and bringing the onto the cloud computing and how it exploded. So, and there I learned a lot about what is security, right? And I was in Homeland Security, and the director came out of FedRAMP and said, technology is super key. Right? You gotta have it. It runs the world, but security is 90% process. Build it, document it, correct it, fix it, repeat. Right? It's a cycle of a living, breathing thing, and that's sort of what you see in the dialogue here from this. Instant response is the same thing, right? You can't just build it and be done with it. Policy is the same thing. You can't just build it and walk away. It's all about the process and the workflow. Just interested in knowing who here is on an instant response team. Anyone? Does anyone here lead an instant response team? You're just part of it? Okay, great. So awesome. It's not a fun job. It really is. It's thankless. It really rides a rail to understanding, what's important to the business when you have an incident, and then how you're going to respond to it and recover from it, right? So, because the business wants everything up, as soon as possible, but we all know instant response shouldn't necessarily function and operate that way. We have a process. If you document it, follow the process to the point where you can either declare the incident resolved, or if the worst thing happens, you have to say the B word, which I don't like to even use in public, because I don't like to say the word breach. It's just, it's overused and misused often. So, anyways, I just wanted to go off for like 5 minutes, because I have a lot to say, so it really came out. But I'm going to flip it over to Mark, and I'll do his intro, and then he'll explain how we're going to go about this, all right?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Can you hear the mic okay? I just messed with it.
We hear you. I don't know if it's the mic.
That's fine. As long as you can hear me, that's all that matters.
I hear an echoing in my head, so
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so how does this work? So I guess I can do a quick introduction about myself. Mark Milutinovic. I am actually primarily providing to us as parts of these steps. So preparation phase, detection analysis, containment eradication. We're going to go through each of those, get feedback, and then if you want kind of the list of our notes, just come ask us at the end, and you can kind of give this to your own organization as a, just a test to run. So, any questions on the beginning? No?
yeah, don't be shy. Just we're all friends. We can talk through it, and like I said, hopefully we all learn something here today.
Acquaintances.
Yeah.
Acquaintances. All right.
So, as far as scenarios go, we'll start with ransomware. We'll do a business email compromise one too, and then if there is time and or interest, we can go into a final one, which will be looking at source code data exfiltration. Keep everyone thinking.
Now we do have like a lot of slides, but we don't want to use them, so don't force us.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're going to have to dip into our own content, but we want you guys to help us. Okay.
Perfect. All right, I'll move on to the next one. This is this one's actually make this full screen.
Yeah, we may have to do
That might be the best way to do it.
While we're doing that, you'll see. I actually, with my team or I build an instant response plan, I have always believed in visual IR or DR. I think it's more powerful and impactful to have a presentation or a workflow. This is a true workflow to start from. I've had a number of customers that say, I love this because it keeps them on track, and it's one slide, it's one page, and they can reference it. And we're going to talk about roles a little bit as we go through this, but from my perspective, some of the people that participate in some of the roles within an incident response team, specifically an incident response coordinator, or who may be ultimately responsible for the plan, but an incident commander, so that the commander and their backup should become intimately familiar with whatever workflow you settle on, right? So this is meant to keep you on task. The hours across the top are notional. The steps are kind of notional, but I think some of it's pretty accurate, and you can derive a workflow or process from this that works for any size organization. So we just did a tabletop yesterday for an organization. The incident response team is 3 people, and we forced the CEO to be there because an incident is not a security issue or an IT issue. If you realize an incident, it's a complete business issue and maybe a business failure if we're not recognizing the need to put a plan in place. So, and then we did a large bank in Boston that we did a tabletop for 3 weeks ago. There were 34 people on that call, including the CEO, completely on it, and asked great questions. So, but it's all about workflow and process, participation, and governance around any aspect of security. But I just wanted to talk through this a little bit and just give you an idea of how my brain works, which may be kind of scary because I actually enjoy doing stuff like this. So, anyways, if you want, you can see us and make sure you get a copy of this if you think you might like to harness it and so on.
All right, so we'll move into the first scenario. We'll keep in mind the Bud's diagram as well as the this little wheel. We'll go through each of these different places. So let's start with the ransomware scenario. So we got a staff member, they're working in HR, and they're calling you in a panic. They're like, something's happening. I have files on my desktop, and they all have this weird file extension that's not PDF. So from there, you're kind of looking through their laptop, whether that be through remote desktop software, and you're finding a readme.txt file for just ransomware information. And that is telling you that you need to send them some Bitcoin to the threat actor. However, there's no specific tie-in to a known piece of ransomware. And then you also are getting 2 other calls from different departments after all of this is said, which probably is telling you that this is a little bit more widespread than just the one device. So yeah, that's our scenario. Anyone run through a tabletop scenario like this? Show of hands. No? Yep, okay, great. So you guys will be my first guinea pigs here. We're gonna start with the preparation piece. So if we're looking at preparation, we're thinking about what can we do, maybe before to kind of plan out a way to mitigate this. It might not always work, but you want to make sure that you've got, 3 layers of this. You've got to have people, processes, and technical controls. So who can give me some people who might be involved in this type of a scenario that you want to have prepped for a ransomware incident? Legal. Great.
Oh,
All right.
Oh, you totally stole my thunder. No one ever says that, but that's a great one. Yeah, that's great.
So we got legal. What was the second one?
help desk.
Help desk. All right. What else?
Finance.
Finance. Why finance?
They have to make a decision if we're gonna pay money or not.
Yep.
Is that right?
Finance. And who here would say that there need to be additional controls in place for, would you pay the ransom? Like who are you bringing into that conversation?
No, C-level, obviously.
C-level, third party. Can you expand on that?
Like ransomware remediation purpose, we'll make contact with the ad actor.
Okay.
Yeah, the comment was a remediation firm that may make contact with the threat actor and negotiate to resolution.
Your
Then you
insurance
mentioned-
company?
What was it?
Your
Cyber
insurance
insurance,
company?
yeah.
Cyber insurance. That's a good one.
What about law enforcement? Or
Okay.
law enforcement, FBI?
Law enforcement.
There's actually a NIST control that asks you to do that. If you're following a catalog of NIST, like 853, I don't remember the control, but engage law enforcement and make contact so you know where to go when you need to.
Empire 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's a good initial group right there. As far as the C-suite goes, are you going to be having a briefing with them prior to things to prep them for this? What might you do to kind of keep them in the loop about this as a risk? Ransomware in general.
Yeah, I think when I think about people controls and shifting that slightly into teams, right? Obviously, if you have a small organization, it's really hard not to wear multiple hats. But in a larger organization, you're obviously your technical incident response team, And then depending on your size, you may, like I said, have a really small team. Like yesterday, I had 3 people, and they're the team, right? The CEO is there, but they're the team. But what I believe in is, having some separation in your teams. The bank that I referenced, they had 18 people on their incident response team. But really, when we got down to it, the recommendation was create core team and extended team, and bring the extended team in when you need to bring them in for a number of reasons. I think it's important you can control communication, which is super critical, right? In an incident, I have experience where information was leaked like right away. We had an incident, and all of a sudden it's like on a website somewhere because someone's looking for a story. So yeah, the fewer the people, the better. And then when you need them, you can expand from the core team to the extended team, and then maybe have your executive incident management team, which would then include C-level, and I would highly recommend, and that was a great point about legal, external legal counsel, but to supplement internal legal if you have them, because they're the ones that can put an incident under privilege, for example, so you can control the communication and how all that happens. And your external counsel will give you guidance on, breach and incident and how and when to communicate. So I probably stole thunder from some other slides, but like I said, I couldn't help myself.
Have privilege so that you can control the narrative. Because
Control the narrative.
Because once the information gets out, then there's no taking it back.
Yeah.
It ties a little bit more to policies, but with the incident response, I've seen this so many times. Just your employees should really know what they should and should not say. You want to be the ones that are relating that to the press, to whoever. I've heard these scenarios where somebody just goes out after and leaks to the media. It's just one of their employees. I don't have to work for 3 days. We got breached. We had an incident, and that's just really bad for your brand. So having your employees know what they should do too as well, whether or not they're the janitor or the CEO, everybody should all know what to do.
Good.
And we set up a password protected WebEx with breakout sessions. So
Okay.
this way we herd the cats, put engineering in one group, put the SOC in another group, put the upper level management in another group, coordinate them, and then have communication from one breakout session to the other as needed. This way, different people are going to be to focus on different things, and if everyone's in one big communication, it just dissolves into hammer.
That's perfect, and that ties both to a technical way that you can kind of herd the cat, so to speak, and then also a process. So you're defining the process that would be a way to more effectively communicate, so that things aren't getting lost. So I'll actually put that in.
That's great. So process controls. What are you guys thinking at this point? I mean, we sort of talked about incident response already, but there's some other processes that are really important. So I'm just wondering what you guys think relative to this scenario. And some of this bleeds into the other scenarios, but just want to, at least in the first scenario, talk about these things because they're obviously foundational, so that when the time comes, you're not going to miss something, hopefully, and your speed to respond and mitigate is critical.
And say having training for all employees so that they know that they need to report this immediately.
That's great.
Right?
Perfect. Yeah. In our workflow, we have detect, right, and then respond. So if people need to be aware as you see something, say something that is anomalistic, and go to your management, call the help desk. That was a great thing. The help desk is integral, right? So if you see something, you should be reporting it. Otherwise, you may have a blind spot, right, if they don't know.
Like we tell employees to unplug it from the network. Do this.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whenever you're in doubt, we always tell everybody too, if you get a sketchy email from somebody you're not sure whether or not, call. Pick up the phone and call the person. It's just such a lost art now. Everybody just responds to emails, does whatever it says, call the person if it seems fishy.
Yeah, that's perfect. And yeah, as far as additional processes go, like you may not always have them work 100%, but having some documentation on who's in charge, like that's another huge piece that is good for preparation. very important to have something documented.
Yeah, have your commanders identified.
Yep.
They own the IRP, right? They're the ones that should be managing that workflow that we looked at, something similar, so that in directing the incident response teams, and also the commanders are liaison between executive management, right? So that we can make a decision. We need a forensics firm. We need a lawyer to help us. We have a cyber event or a privacy, could lead to a privacy event. Just helping that communication and flow and protecting the response team from getting dragged into meetings. And again, if you're smaller, that's a challenge, but it still can be achieved. So it's really important.
And then kind of the last section here would be the actual technical controls associated. So, one of the questions I like to ask, especially when working with a perfect team scenario, is, well, what logs do you have? What could you do in order to detect these types of events? So can anyone tell me good log source for anything ransomware?
Windows event manager.
Yep. Windows event. I always like to throw out ER, win event, SIM. Yep. But then the other question is, who owns these logs? So that's another policy or process thing that you have to probably follow. Do you actually have access to the raw log data, or do you have a third party that's part of this that is the one that's in the weeds? Can you get immediate access if you need?
Yeah, you may find the answer to that, and if not all organizations have it, but I just finished a records retention schedule and policy for a really large organization. So that's one part of it. Like that breaks into multiple pieces, but logs are retained for 365 days. They roll 6 months live, 6 months cold, storage or something like that. That's a really important thing to figure out as you go through that. Now, one thing real quick, if you have a managed SOC or a SIM, oftentimes that tool will follow the local auditing policies that are set for devices, servers, workstations. So it's always a good idea to make sure that your Windows auditing policies are set to what you want them to be, so you can suck that into your SOCs into your scene in detail. Because I managed a breach back in March, and they didn't quite have everything, right? We couldn't quite determine manual manipulation of files by the threat actor. We could only see it was a programmatic access to files, and that made a difference to the lawyers. I spent a lot of time on that, and just couldn't get there because the data wasn't available. So looking at your log origination and what you're actually doing, super important.
All right. So now we get to move on to more of the fun stuff.
This is all fun.
That's true.
One more process thing.
Sure. Sorry.
And when I build if you haven't done it, it's fine, but building an incident response plan in a vacuum is okay because you have something, but I always like to engage the customer and go through a business impact assessment. It's not a 6-month crunching numbers, coming out with financial, operational, reputational impact numerically. It's about what are your key business functions, what's the associated technology, and the first thing I look for is, you have this technology, are you collecting, processing, and storing personally identifiable information? If you are, that's #1 priority. And for me, if I see an event against that asset or that service, it's automatic IR plan activation, at least for the core team like we talked about. I want to waste time. I want them engaged if there's something going on with a particular system that we deem is critical, and that leads you also into the DR thing. So these things all work together, as you know. All these tools work together to make you more secure and responsive.
Should there be any consideration like critical third-party vendors in the preparation phase?
That's certainly a part of it. I mean, they can be third-party hosting PII, and you're going to want to know, what it is that they're doing and how they're doing it, right? And there's multiple pieces to that, but the way to manage that is upfront contractually, and we all know businesses are kind of disconnected, and they just need to solve a business problem. So they go execute an agreement, and now all of a sudden you have no control over that third party. So yeah, that's a great point.
How do you define criticality and materiality? How do you break those down? How would
Yeah,
you go
that's
about
that's interesting because like DFS, New York State DFS, and I think it's 201 CR 17, the Security Exchange Commission and the new rule that just came out for reporting, they're kind of bland, right? And when you talk about materiality, that's how they describe it. If you have something material in nature, you have to report it within X. And many of these legislations will say, if you report to some other governing body, you got to report to us too. You can't leave us out. So there's all these nuances, and that's part of the criticality is about how critical is it to the business. And IT likes to jump in and say, "Oh, I know this is super critical," or it's not critical at all, but it may be to the business owner, right? It may be to the person that runs customer support.
And defining materiality is just.
Great matter.
Yes.
Yeah. So I suggest taking be as aggressive as you can in that case, right? You don't want to have everything number one. You can't, because then you get bogged down when it comes to recovery. But from a response perspective, you can play ahead with it more later.
I'm doing the research on materiality right now for my company, and the consensus seems to be that the people who already do your SEC filings already understand materiality in other matters, and they should just use the same principles
That's great.
against an IT incident that to determine whether it would rise. The key thing is, and this is what I did immediately, is rewrite your incident response process right now if you haven't, with an important step at the top that says, as soon as this incident is contained, initiate your materiality discussion so that you don't miss the window of reporting, because it's short.
Yeah, I mean, SEC is 96 hours?
Right, with the great point of,
Yeah.
from the point you determined
Right.
that your incident is concluded, at least you have the wiggle room for that. But you better not, do the dumb thing of saying, well, it took us 6 months to finish and remediate. You're not allowed to take all that time to figure it out, right?
And I know CISOs and CIOs are shaking in their shoes, right? Because what do you say, what do you say, and what do you not say? That's where counsel comes into play to interpret the legislation and the law and help you report accurately, right? And help you write the report. I would say write them up ahead of time, and all your communications templatize, right? So you at least have 60% of it, and then the nuance changes you make. It's a little bit easier. Sorry, Mark.
No, you're good. This is perfect.
This is still 5 minutes from now.
I'm also going to add too, for the technical controls in here, just proactively figuring out what in your environment can you lock down further, as far as maybe local admin access, things that are technical in nature that are able to mitigate against something that's moving laterally within the network, so only opening the things that you need, and ensuring that you have those detection capabilities installed on the global network. Because the majority of the time, even running purple team exercises, someone will say, hey, we have logging, we have everything that's going and being sent to the SIM. I'll run a test case through and it will turn off that logging is not even enabled on the device, even if it's a standard device configuration. So periodically checking that and making sure your technical controls are in line, that's a key technical thing to figure out. So add that here. Now, getting into the actual fun part of, at least from my perspective, of detection and analysis, one of the ways to go through the IR tabletop, you can go through scenarios one at a time, but if you start adding in random chance, sometimes it can be more fun. There's some companies out there, I think, that have online resources for what was it? No. Dungeons and Dragons-esque scenarios, so you'll roll dice and see what happens. So in this particular use case, we won't play that exactly, but to further the scenario, you've identified all these processes here, and you know who to contact. It just so happens that your MSP is the one who's monitoring your logging and doing alert detection. They're MIA. They've just gone silent. You're not hearing from them whatsoever. Can you think of some alternative strategies to help respond and detect this type of activity from those user calls if you've lost access to your logging and monitoring solutions. How would you start contacting people?
So this just goes back on like the police our MSP was multiple, so
Yep.
physically showing up there.
Okay, physically showing up to the MSP? Yeah, that's an option.
Yeah.
If you need to contact your users, you might have like some kind of like emergency response, blast to like, their phone.
Yep. So, have a plan to contact MSP. Alternative communication methods, that's perfect.
Yeah, assuming something's unavailable, like email or something like that. That bank that I referenced, they're just in the midst of implementing emergency response and communications. So they're looking for that, alternate channel. And I think they're also using some Gmail, freeware Gmail email accounts to keep some of that going in the event something happened and they couldn't communicate in normal channels.
And then likely as far as, the people who are involved here, this is where you start getting in the weeds of, who's actually handling the incident. Do you have an incident response commander? What does your team structure look like? If in the case in this particular scenario, you're not going to have a third party reaching out, do you have anyone in-house that you can contact in order to, further getting rid of this issue?
What I've seen a lot too, and it's just such a dumb mistake, is on incident response plans, people are using people's names. Call Jim in case of emergency. Who's Jim? Quit 3 years ago. So make sure you're using titles and not names when you're dedicating that. So anybody should be able to go in there. I should be able to go in there and understand your plan and understand what to do if I'm in that role.
Yeah, I had something similar but reversed. They just had the title, but they didn't have any other information to decipher to get you to the point where you could contact and engage. So we massage it a little bit to give the reader who's consuming and trying to make a decision a little bit more information on how to go about that. And if you want to include names, you can keep it in an appendix so you don't have to, depending on how rigorous you are, you can keep it separate, and then everyone's using it from a DR perspective or IR perspective, or any type of business in there, right? So some of this stuff is universal, it floats across functions and responses.
And a couple more things. So, see above for honestly people controls, because they're going to be inside, this whole process with you in some way, shape, or form. So if you're using that bridge that's separating people off, maybe having a touch point as part of your process to get those updates periodically from each group that's working, that's a perfect way to, kind of make sure that things are moving in the right direction. Backing up, having different backup data sources to reference in case one major one goes down, that's also going to potentially save you at the end of the day, because we all know that things don't generally work right. Like the demo gods usually are not with us, and during an incident, not everything is going to be perfect. So always try to mitigate as best you can. We'll jump over to kind of the containment approach.
Just one thing.
Yeah.
If you have a managed SOC as a service, make sure that you understand what their playbook says, right? Because what you expect as an integral part of IT and managing events that may lead to an incident that could lead to a breach, you want to make sure that if something's super hypercritical to you, that you're pulled into it within an appropriate amount of time. And many of the SOC providers that we provide or offer and work with, that's one of the first steps when we onboard. Like, tell us your workflow. How do you want to be contacted? How quickly do you want to be contacted? Is there anything that's like super critical? Sometimes it gets missed, and it's just assumed that something's going to happen. But you want to make sure that what your expectations are meet their ability to deliver. Right? So that's
I think you back off that too and say the shared responsibility model for a lot of this is like, know what your role is in responding to an incident, because often you'll get, hey, an alert fired, but no one did anything. well, you know, that was your responsibility as the company. When you're reviewing the documentation for the MSP agreement, you need to make sure that, you know, you're aware of what you're responding to and what they're responding to, and make sure it aligns pretty well.
I have so much just flooding to my head, so I'll say one more thing.
Yeah.
I talked about that big breach that I was a part of. They had an instant response plan because I helped them fix it. They never did the training after multiple attempts, and then they call me and say, "Can you manage the incident?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." After 4 months, okay, sure, I'll manage the incident. But yeah, it's just that's a really frustrating part of that type of activity. So I'll just throw that out there. I mean,
It should be a living, breathing document, you know. You should, you know, minimally every 6 months, pull it out, test it out, make sure it works, make sure everybody knows what to do. If it's just sitting there collecting dust, it's useless.
and some you have to do because you're going to get audited and you're going to want to see
Yeah.
those results.
Especially with cyber liability insurance.
Yeah, your cyber provider may not renew, or you may not get insurance if you don't.
Or you get breached and you find out that they're not gonna pay you because you didn't have anything in place.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Any way not to pay it.
As far as containment goes, you're kind of at the end stage of, you know, kind of wrapping up the incident from potentially a technical perspective. But this is where it's important to make sure that you're engaging the right folks. You know, some companies, depending on size, you might have your IT guy be your security guy. But if you're at a big enough enterprise, you know, it might be 2 different teams. So do you know who's in place? And I guess back to the audience, do you know who you might call on for a recovery type scenario? So devices have been encrypted, you've got to recover from backup. Is it your same people?
I will add that I keep referencing this breach. There was pressure from board level to get it back up and running, right? But we weren't sure that we had eradicated the threat actor and any remnants. So being the commander, I pushed back, and then the team did too. They're all supporting, like, we have to slow down. We don't know if we've gotten rid of everything. We didn't have EDR fully deployed. So making sure from a technical control, detection, and analysis, we, within a matter of hours, deployed EDR to another 3,000 devices. And then we could really get a handle on, are we clean, so that now we can come back to a recovery. We had the data, we knew it was good, because there was multiple sources, as Mark mentioned, but we didn't know if we were clean, so we went through the process to make sure that we were confident before we laid everything back down, and then have to go back to the board to say, oh, we screwed up, and we didn't catch everything, and now we're reinfected. So, and just, you know, that's where the commander can really, you know, provide some guidance.
So from the containment, investigative part, if I don't have on-staff expertise, I should probably have like a forensics company or something on retainer.
Yeah. Something on retainer is good, or knowing who you're going to contact in that. Sometimes you'll have, say, like cyber insurance vendors or people who have recommended ones. You know, there's pros and cons to each, but at least having someone that you've already had a conversation with will definitely help you going forward.
In my IR team, should they be getting any additional specialized training over and above the normal wireless training and stuff like that with the employees?
Yeah, it depends on size for sure. So, you know, if you can get someone who is skilled in forensics or reverse engineering, that's always beneficial. Sometimes even converting one of your red team guys to operate in those like extreme situations can be beneficial. But yeah, encourage a culture of training. That's pretty key.
And you know, forensics is so specialized, you may or may not have that skill set on staff, and that's important to also slow down a recovery, because you may need to gather evidence in the event that you're going to consider some type of legal avenue, right? You may engage law enforcement, and you may want at some point consider litigation of some nature against someone, but if you don't have the evidence and it wasn't collected in the proper manner and secure chain of custody, those are all factors that you should be considering.
You can always contact Harbor Security too. We'll have to
Yes, sure.
gotta put a plug in somewhere.
Either way, So I'm looking at time too, and I think we're only gonna get through one scenario. So you guys can really, yeah,
It's my fault.
you're good. But either way, I think we're moving on towards kind of a wrap up of it. So, an incident is kind of finished up here. What are your processes? If you have an incident outside of even just ransomware, what might you be doing as part of a review? Anyone got things that they would like to share?
Well, you need to have a follow-up meeting at the end to have lessons learned and
Lessons learned.
be able to figure out, well, how did it get in there to begin with, so you can try to, prevent it in the future.
What I found out a week ago, actually, from Bud was, which was really surprising to me, was 95% of organizations that have an incident or breached happens the second time.
Or more.
Yeah.
And then 12%, it was 11%, 12% had over 10 incidents after they had the first one. It's a shocking number when you look at it. Like, wow.
It's gonna happen.
Why do you think
What's
that
the
is?
root cause?
Well, one company I know for certain that revenue blinded them and they rather just pay their ransomware remediation so that they do not lose track of accelerating the business growth, hitting the revenue targets that the CEO committed to the board. I'll just pay for it. It's just a business expense, which is ridiculous.
So you get the reputation, the company gets a reputation of paying, so now you can call them.
Yeah.
All over the dark web, this company pays, I paid at this amount, next. All right, let's try
I
it.
wish I could say who it was because I was so annoyed because the poor governance guy, he's only one guy doing security in this big company, and he was being told, oh, okay, great, this is cute, but we're not doing it. It's just really frustrating.
And do people go back and update their incident response plan after the exercise or after an incident?
Yeah.
You should be, from
Sure.
your lessons learned, going back and
Sure.
putting a whole.
Yeah.
And then, one thing we didn't talk about, but it's really important, is managing the communication. Well, we talked about it a little bit, but, meeting in person is best. Meeting virtually works really well, but not remediating and mitigating through email, right? That can come back to bite you big time, especially if you're not underprivileged. If there's a lawyer involved, they're going to say they're going to say that by the first thing. Verbal communications, and at the end, write your report, right? So collect your data, keep it private, it's confidential, privileged and confidential, and at the end, come together and write your final report. Or an external counsel, if you have a breach, they're going to want it, I know painfully well, how they want it structured and documented, because I just lived it, and it was not a fun thing. But they want it a certain way, so it's all part of the post if you get to that point.
Yeah, and updating that document is huge. Continual cycle, and then even on the technical side, as far as testing, if you're able to get someone who is forensically capable and can reverse engineer the payload, or you're able to figure out what happened, that's when you can actually start engaging within your own team of re-simulating the incident. So that would basically allow you to purple team the same types of controls, identifying the threat actor group that's potentially targeting you, see what other capabilities they have, and then you can start actually testing against your standard device setup as to, can I actually see this going forward? If I was going to get hit by that same strand of ransomware again, would my EDR actually block it? Can I tune that? Can I create alerts that are custom to my environment? Because I'm sure everyone here can agree, everyone's environment's different. At the end of the day, you'd love the out-of-box alerts would be what save you, but usually there's some sort of manual creation that's has to be done.
100%.
Go ahead.
So another thought on post-incident,
Yeah.
look at other people's incidents.
Yes.
So I've been studying the MGM situation, and I instituted an identity check at my help desk, much to their chagrin. But that's how they got to their second stage on that intrusion.
Yeah, the goal is to keep your IR plan on the shelf and not use it, right?
Yeah.
And all these things converge into, all these terms, defensive depth, right? That's been long used, but, and the whole people process technology that we have here, all that is meaningful and impactful, and not it's not just word salad, it really, when you break it down, it's really critical, that's a great point.
Thanks.
I just wanted to say, we only have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I think. we're
Yeah, so
good.
if you guys, if anybody wants this, a copy of this with the notes and everything, just, come up and give me your email, card, whatever. I'll get it over to you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll free up these. But yeah, we can turn it over to a Q&A if desired. Anything you got for us?
Yeah, can we help engineer something together? If someone's got a problem they want to talk through, we're happy to.
In 4 minutes.
In 4 minutes, we'll solve it.
Oh, I made all it take, yeah.
What was all it takes?
Are you using in the last 5 years or 1 year?
You mean for the brief shit we had? I'll say, but it wasn't their fault because the customer was not fully deployed. I don't know if I said this, but they only wanted to deploy to certain assets. Well, these are our most critical assets, and that's not where the bad guys were. So it was Armor Point, and they were fantastic. It flagged, it detected it, flagged it, alerted, and then the team didn't respond. The incident responded in a timely manner, and we kept reaching out. They just didn't respond, and by then it was too late.
Technology can only do so much. Exactly.
Yeah.
People are the weakest link.
And your point of how they wind up getting re-breached is because they don't have the people, they don't have the technical skills to be able to, fix the problem. So
Right.
They might have got them out of there, but they didn't fix the underlying issue that caused them to get in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have another breach, small one, that the IT administrator refused to use MFA because he did not have a smartphone. So, and his credentials were breached, and then it led to a 3-week shutdown for that company. And they had to negotiate. They had no backups, they had no logging, they had nothing, and that guy is still there. Shocking. Shocking.
Whose nephew is he?
And he told our forensics guy, I should have retired 3 months ago. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you should retire now. It was really shocking. Yeah. And they're still getting alerts because we have access. I can see it. And we say, hey, you got some stuff going on. You may want to look, you got lateral over there. You may want to look at it. Because they're not our customer anymore. Hey, you better look in here.
And you're still receiving alerts.
Yeah, because we sold them some software. We sold them S1, 701, and we see it. We get the alerts. But they didn't want us to provide the service. So I'm like, all right, if you're managing it, you're freaking managing. You got alerts coming to you. So do something with it. So. I mean, it's a prime example of someone getting hit. Right? They're probably already compromised after 2 months later.
Thank you all for.
Yeah, thanks for staying awake.
I appreciate it.